Writing as a technology. Most of the ideas in this presentation come from a 1992 article by Walter Ong called Writing as a Technology That Restructures Thought. We only have time to talk about the first 4 words of the title today, though. We tend to use a lot of metaphors to describe writing. We'll say something like writing is painting with words, for example. Or we'll say that some writers' words are musical. And if we don't like something we're reading, we might even say that this is garbage. But those are all metaphors. When we say writing as a technology or writing as a tool, we mean it much more literally, in the way that a hammer is a tool. A hammer makes specific kinds of work easier, like driving nails into a 2x4 so you can build a house, or breaking up concrete and drywall so you can tear that house down. It's all just work a hammer can make easier. Of course, writing can also be used to create beautiful, deeply moving, yet simple stories of ill-fated love, like Thousand Cranes by Yasunari Kawabata. But if you aren't writing a deeply moving yet simple story of ill-fated love, it doesn't mean you aren't using writing to its fullest potential. You're using writing to its fullest potential every time you make a list, send an email, or text a friend. Writing is a simple tool that can make specific kinds of work easier and quicker. Imagine if every time you wanted to tell someone something, you had to be in the same physical location as them. Who has time for that? Ancient people did. When humans first began speaking about 200,000 years ago, they didn't also say, hey, this language thing we're doing with our mouths, these sounds we can all make and understand, we should invent a system of tiny symbols for recording and transmitting this thing that we just started doing, just now. The invention of writing systems happened much more recently than the appearance of human language, with the earliest writing systems being only about 5,000 or 6,000 years old. Prior to writing systems, many societies relied on what we call oral tradition. In an oral tradition, important information is passed from person to person via spoken language, and each person remembers everything they need to know in their daily lives, or knows somebody who remembers, or knows someone who remembers. And that can lead to obvious problems. If you ever played the game Telephone as a child, you know that a message can become altered by each person who passes it on. In an oral culture, this isn't necessarily a problem. It's just a part of the communication process you have to be aware of. Knowledge in an oral culture is a little slippery, so you learn to handle it carefully when you pass it on to the next person. But that slipperiness becomes a bigger problem when societies begin taking on larger projects, like trading with other societies across vast distances. If you agree to sail hundreds of miles to trade your sheep for somebody else's grain, you want the agreed upon amount of grain waiting when you arrive, not the amount of grain your trading partner remembers promising you. That's exactly why we have contracts. So it comes as no surprise that the earliest examples of writing we have aren't laws or poetry or religious texts. They're things like contracts, inventories, recipes, and receipts like this one. Writing eventually became so useful that it was adopted by artists and poets and playwrights, but that came later. Now let's go back to the example of the hammer. This is Michelangelo's Pietà. It's a masterpiece of the art of sculpture. It was carved very carefully out of a single gigantic piece of marble. But the tools Michelangelo used were similar to the tools any stonemason at the time might have used to shape stones, bricks, and tiles for construction jobs. The same tools any serious professional would have used, whether they were carving a pietà or tiling an outhouse. And like many other technologies, writing systems change over time and gain new features. When a writing system was first introduced to Latin, for example, they hadn't yet invented spaces between words. Now, if you spoke Latin, you could probably make out the individual words, but it takes a little extra time. Spaces were invented not because they're logical breaks between words and ideas, but because they make the work of reading a message so much easier. In many spoken languages, you might pause to take a breath or make a point, but you don't normally pause between every word. That would be annoying. Writing technologies also change over time. Copying a single book used to be an extremely labor-intensive hand-making process that could take months. That meant only the wealthiest people could afford books, and only the wealthiest people learned to read and write, and that made it easy for people in power to control who had important information and who didn't. Additional technologies like this printing press are then invented to help us copy and transmit writing more quickly, driving down the cost of making those copies so you can do things like print posters to put on walls and hand out pamphlets for free. The more people learn to read and write, the more the benefits of reading and writing spread through a society. And eventually enough people in a society can learn to read and write that ideas start to spread quicker than the people in power can control them. Whoops. And today, new writing technologies weave writing into our lives so completely that we often don't notice we're using a tool at all. Many people don't think of themselves as writers, even though they use writing all day long. There are even writing technologies so advanced that they make it seem like they can write for us. But asking a writing tool to write for you is a little like asking a hammer to build a house. The results may disappoint you. By the way, AI generated this image of a hammer trying to build a house, and that's clearly not where a hammer's nose would go. Let's try again. Make it so the face of the hammer is the nose. Embarrassing. So reminding ourselves that even the most advanced writing technology is just a tool can be important when we have the kinds of problems that writing is good at solving. In situations where we need to send an idea to someone far away, tell lots of people the same thing quickly, or just remember an important idea so we can think about it more later. The best writing tools tend to be the ones that help us do work like that a little bit easier and a little bit more quickly. And that's the kind of writing work this class is going to focus on. Thank you.